Hi, and welcome back to the Pilot Factored. As we've completed the chapter on sleep and fatigue, and we now know the basic, very foundational core concepts of the performance pyramid, now we can move on to the next steps, which will allow us to reach the top or the peak of that said pyramid. So as we've explored before, we know that first is sleep, and without sleep, it doesn't matter how we eat. Um, we're never going to really reach the top. So once that now that we've mastered sleep, we can now move on to nutrition, which is going to be the next big thing because, as it's been said many times before, you cannot out work out a bad diet. Okay, we can't. As hard as we work out and we keep active, if we don't eat right, it's never going to be quite enough. So this chapter or these next three chapters are going to take us through nutritional basics. This is not meant to be um, replacing, the help of a professional, a doctor, or a nutritional professional, but instead just to give you a basic knowledge and understanding of how it all works and the structure of a meal, how it affects your body, and the different parts of food. So, without further ado, let's dive in. The very basics of nutrition is calories. Okay, just like an airplane that you fly or a car that you drive, calories is the fuel that you put in. However, unlike an airplane or a car, it is very possible to overfill that tank. Um, it'll just store it more and more and more. And so imagine that car or that airplane as you're putting fuel into it instead of saying, right, I'm full, and overfilling, just spilling out. Well, in our case, um, it would just balloon up and start, growing bigger and bigger, just to store up all that energy that you're trying to give it. So calories, where it pertains to us, is considered fuel. Now, for our body to run, we need a certain amount of fuel. So in 1958, we're going to get to that first, a scientist named Max Wishnowsky concluded that the caloric equivalent of 1 pound of body weight lost or gained was equal to 3,500 calories. So that's 1 pound of body weight if it was just pure fat. Okay. Um, Calories are the energy, as we said, that we find from food. Okay, regardless of where they come from, the calories you eat are either converted to physical energy, so that's called thermodynamics, or stored in your body as fat. These calories will remain in your body as fat unless you use them up. Okay, again, thermodynamics. You use them up, they burn up, they go out as energy. You don't, they just get stored in your body. Um, so for a fit, quote unquote, female, the amount of body fat that would be considered healthy is between 21 to 24%. Now that's saying the person is fit. All right, imagine like a not an athlete, but somebody who keeps active. Same for a male body. The fit body fat percentage would be between 14 to 17% of your body mass. So as we said before, calories per pound of fat is 3,500. We'll find that in a pound of fat. And energy from calories, okay, will fuel your every action, whether it's just fidgeting on your chair to like running a marathon. They are the body's fuel. All right, so just how many calories do you need? Well, there's a formula called the total daily energy expenditure formula, which basically breaks down how many calories or how much energy we need for our body to function throughout the day. So first we need to figure out our resting energy expenditure, which is the energy that it takes to run our body just without any movement, just simple breathing. Imagine sitting down all day long or laying down all day long. From there, we can formulate how much we need on a typical daily active day. Sorry. So here in an example, we have 180 pounds male, 30 years old, 6'1", charismatic, good looking. No, I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with it. Sorry. If you look at the formula real quick, you'll see that we come up to 1,821 calories just for resting body. Similarly, for a 135-pound female, 25 years old, 5'6", we're looking at 1,368 calories. Again, that's just for that person to sit down all day long and breathe and do nothing else. So, just as a reminder here, going through the operation, remember your high school math lessons about order of operation. That being said, knowing how much we need on a daily basis without moving at all is typically pretty useless because every day we go about our day, we will walk around, even if it's just, very little bit. So we need to figure out what the total daily energy expenditure will be. That's based on our activity level. So since most people don't lie in bed all day long and doing absolutely nothing, as we said, we have to figure out the TDEE. Okay, so there's 4 different categories here. Sedentary is just normal everyday activity, like just a little bit of walking, a couple of flights of stairs, eating, talking, etc. So if you're an office worker, you use the elevator every time, and all the walking that you do is between, your house and your car and your desk and the lunchroom. That will be considered sedentary. Light activity is something like an office worker, but who would do some moderate exercise every once in a while. So that brings it up to about your resting energy expenditure plus, times 1.375. You can see the numbers going up there. Now we're looking at moderate activity. This would this would be considered intense exercise but sedentary job. So somebody that's into CrossFit, doing it all the time, but whose job keeps them at their desk. Okay, so or as a pilot, we're sitting all the time in the airplane, but outside the plane, we keep active, go biking, go running, and all that. That would be considered moderate activity. And very active is somebody who's doing moderate exercise and an active job. Always or often on your feet. So that would be even a teacher, for example, or other people like that who are up and about all the time. All that being said, it's pretty simple. Eat what you need and you'll maintain your baseline energy level and mass. Eat less and you're going to be in an energy deficit, which results in loss of mass. Eat more than you need and the extra energy will be stored as additional mass. So here, for example, we have our 180 pounds male, remember 30 years old, 6'1", charismatic and good looking, doing some light activity. We all of a sudden jump up from that 1,800 calories, remember that we had at the beginning, up to 2,503 calories. Okay, so we just added 700 calories almost just for light activity. Same thing for that female, 135 pounds, 25 years old, 5'6". We go up from that lowly, I think it was 1,300 calories to 2,120 calories. And that's for moderate activity. So you can see how different now all of a sudden when we take into account the activity levels, what the difference can be. All right, so now knowing what amount of calories we need, we have to understand what they're made of. Calories are a means to measure energy, as we said before, but the source of that energy can further be subdivided into what are now called macronutrients. You're familiar with all of them, even though you might not know it. We have the carbohydrates, our fat, and our protein. So as a good Canadian, I'm going to use the Canadian beverage of choice, and no, it's not beer, it is a Tim Hortons large double double. Yes, a large coffee, two creams, two sugars. So let's look at how it's divided in terms of of calories, because we know, okay, well, that's 270 calories, or for an adult male doing light activity, it's just above 10% of our daily calorie intake. So how is that subdivided now into macronutrients? Well, we have 30 grams of carbs, 14 grams of fat, and 2 grams of protein. Let's move on to a Starbucks venti latte macchiato, so exactly the same amount of fluid. We just bump it up a tiny bit in calorie wise to 290 calories, less carbs, more fat, a lot more protein. And finally, just for comparison's sake, let's bring in a beer, and not any beer, a nice thick Guinness. Um, Surprisingly comes in 60 calories lower than Tim Hortons coffee, with quite a few more carbs, almost no fat, and the same amount of protein as our Timmy's coffee. So what does this all mean to us today or day to day? How can I use this information to make better choices about my food and optimize it? Well, as we said, calories are divided into three macronutrients. Carbohydrates, let's start there because they are everywhere and they are the bread and butter of, the energy for our body. This is where we get literally like most of our energy. On a typical day, carbohydrates are equivalent to 4 calories per gram of carbs. Okay, the body uses carbs to make glucose, which is a preferred fuel or energy, off of which our bodies run. They're literally what keeps us going. Protein also pack 4 calories per gram of protein, and they help feed and regenerate our muscles mainly. Fats clock up at 9 calories per gram, so much more calorie dense than the other two. But they are important fuel for our brains, fatty tissues, as well as hormone balancing. So they are absolutely vital to our health. But what remains to be seen is which kind of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates are the best. And finally, I know I said there were three macronutrients, but really alcohol is considered the fourth macronutrient, and it comes in at 7 calories per gram. So the fourth macronutrient is not counted as fuel because it's basically doesn't provide much energy and it's considered poison by the body. But more on this later. All right, so to understand macronutrition a bit better, each needs to be explored in more detail. So the first thing that they have in common, macronutrients, is that their quality and effects on your body can greatly vary depending on what you choose to eat. Okay, you've probably heard the words simple, complex carbs, trans fats, lean proteins thrown around before. Eating well starts with being aware of what you're eating and how it will affect your body as it gets processed. To help understand this better, imagine your body as a house. And as we're going to go through that, you'll see the picture. But to build your house, remodel, or expand it properly, you need the correct materials. Cheap out, and you suffer the consequences, whether it's long and short term. Oh. So as we said, we need to be aware of what we eat, or I like to call it aware eating. Okay, so each macronutrient has its own caloric value, as we saw, and defines just how much fuel you get from what you eat and drink, regardless of its health value. Now, while there's no one magic combination, you can optimize your diet by adjusting the composition of where those calories come from, depending on your goals. So the 2010 dietary guidelines for Americans recommend eating within the following range. 45 to 65% of your calories should come from carbs, 10 to 35% of your calories should come from protein, and 20 to 35% of your calories should come from fat. So now, in our example here, on a 2,000 calories uh, intake a day, which is what you'll see like on the back of most labels, based on the 2,000 calorie um, intake a day. So based on that, if we went with just a very rounded out macro here, that's called a macro, is when we subdivide everything into categories and we count how many calories come from each of them. Let's say that we went with 50% of our calories coming from carbs in a day. That would come up to 250 grams of carbs daily. Same for the protein at 25%, that would come up to 125 grams of protein daily. And why now does 25% of fat and 25% protein differ in the number of grams that we would have to have? Remember that your 1 gram of fat comes at 9 calories per gram. So you need a lot less to get to that 500 calories. Okay, so let's move on. Let's dive into carbohydrates. Carbs, as we said earlier, are the main frame of our body. That's the main source of energy. Think of carbohydrates, as we used the house analogy before, as the main structure of that house. Once absorbed, carbohydrates are transformed into glucose, which is the body's primary way to fuel both the muscles and the brain. Carbohydrates promote insulin release. This hormone plays a critical role in shuttling sugars, so carbs, and amino acids, protein, into the muscles. So here, I'm just going to take a quick stop here and explain one thing that a lot of people don't understand. Carbohydrates are essential to moving the protein. So if you're a gym buff and you think that everything you need is protein, 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 for example, that is not true. You absolutely need to have some carbs of that protein to help it get used by the body better. Okay, so some amount of carbs need to be there. So the other thing to understand is that there is, because of that, sort of a minimum amount of carbs required to fuel a body. An adult's brain, red blood cells, and central nervous system requires about 130 grams of carbohydrates per day. And that is important because if we don't get enough carbs from our diet, the body will break down protein, which can be turned into glucose by the body to maintain blood sugar levels and fuel the brain and red blood cells. So your body will in effect eat its own muscles, break down its protein to provide the carbs and the sugar it needs for the body. Carbs are made up of fiber, starch, and sugars. Okay, there are two types of carbs. One which is called simple carb, and the other one which is called, well, you guessed it, complex carbs. Simple carbs are made up of just 1 or 2 sugar molecules, which can be easily broken down and absorbed as glucose in the bloodstream. Be mindful of the fact that simple carbs, like processed sugars, will spike your blood sugar levels, insulin, fast, followed by the ensuing, dreaded sugar crash that we've all experienced at some point in our life. They are often found in lighter colored foods, such as white bread, white rice, some fruits like apples, and processed sugars. Complex carbs, on the other hand, pack in more nutrients than simple carbs. They're higher in fiber, digest more slowly. This also makes them more filling because of that, which means that they're a good option for weight control if you're trying to lose weight or maintain weight without eating too much. They contain a high number of vitamins and minerals and are digested slowly, providing a longer and more linear release of energy also. So not only do they take longer to digest and they keep you full longer, but they also release the energy much slower but more sustained, so that you don't have that sort of like sugar crash at the very end. So complex carbs are often found in darker brown colored foods such as vegetables, leafy greens, and berries. Here, quick note on the glucose. The body's preferred carb-based energy source. Some common sources of those simple carbs, like we said, will be any food with added sugar. Obviously, candy, soda, donuts, all that stuff. Your Timmy's double double. They're considered high. They're usually the highly refined and processed foods that we find a lot in North America's, staple diet. So white bread, breakfast cereal, bagels, all that stuff, pasta, even milk is highly processed here. Note on glucose, they're absorbed directly across the small intestine lining into the bloodstream. So usually the body will either use them immediately to create energy or turn them into glycogen to be stored into your muscle or liver for future use. If unavailable, if glucose is unavailable, your liver can make this type of sugar from other fuel sources. Okay, so other sugars, protein, as we said before, etc. It will rise your blood sugar quickly and stimulate insulin release. So people with diabetes often are fighting this. Fructose, which is not a kind of simple carb, is can be used by the body, but needs to be converted by the liver into glucose. So you'll find fructose, which is the natural sugar element, um, in fruits, honey, agave, root vegetables, and things like that. So imagine like your maple syrup, your honey. This is all fructose. This is all the nature's own sugar. All right, moving on to the complex carb or our long-term energy compared to the short-term energy of the simple carbs. Complex carbs, one thing to know is they pack in more nutrient than simple carbs, as we said before. They're higher in fiber, digest more slowly. We've all said that also. This makes them more filling, which means that they're a good option, to keep you going longer. They're also ideal for people with type 2 diabetes because they help manage your blood sugar spikes after meals. Fiber and starch are the two types of complex carbohydrate. Both starch and fiber are what are called long chain polysaccharides. That's a long word, but it means multiple sugar molecules connected together with a bond. So while both are comprised of these simple sugars, it's the bond between them that makes the difference. So we can't digest the bonds between glucose units, for example, in fiber. So therefore, fiber will move through the small intestine undigested, while starch is broken down into glucose and absorbed. So fiber is like an advanced delivery device. It provides a slow, steady release of energy from the carbohydrates, but it also goes through the body without getting absorbed because of that complex bond that our body cannot process. Um, so the main sources of dietary fiber will include fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains, and so on. Um, if you are a purist at counting your calories, for example, any carbs that are considered being fiber don't typically count towards your total calorie count for that reason, because at the end of the day, they are not absorbed by the body. Fiber is especially important because it promotes bowel regularity. We all know that helps to control cholesterol. The slow release of complex carbohydrate is in due part to the high fiber count. So your dietary reference intake, or DRI, for total fiber intake for an adult is about 14 grams per 1,000 calories intake. As we said, fibers will leave the body without affecting a calorie count, as it is not itself digestible by the human body. Women should get in roughly 25 grams and men about 35 grams of dietary fiber each day. There are, however, potential consequences of eating too much fiber, including constipation, ironically enough, diarrhea, gas, bloating, calorie inefficiency because we'll feel very full from eating a lot of fiber, but really it's not staying in our body, it's just leaving again. So we're not actually eating enough. And decreased mineral absorption. The consequences of getting too little fiber include increased risk of constipation, heart disease, and so on. Starch. Starchy foods are a good source of energy, and they are the main source of a range of nutrients in our diet. So as well as starch, they contain fiber, calcium, iron, and B vitamins. They are great sources of starch include beans and legumes, whole grains, and root vegetables. Starchy foods are the body's main source of fuel. As you saw, we need a little bit of fiber for sure, and we tend to want to stay away from simple carbs. So we're going to get our main carbohydrates from starchy foods if we can. Even if you suffer from diabetes, you still need these carbs in your diet. So ideally, choose whole and minimally processed starchy foods with high fiber content. Starches are made of several sugar molecules like fiber. However, so this is why they're classified as carbohydrates. Um, they have single or double linked sugar molecules and are referred to as, any single or double linked sugar molecule is referred to as a simple carb, but starches have several of them. Sorry for the confusion. So starches are eventually broken down and absorbed by the body as simple sugars. Even so, starches are a single type of carb found in food that are separate from simple sugars found in foods. Starches will take your body a while to break down, so they also provide the benefits of feeling fuller longer. Again, both starches and sugars are examples of carbohydrates. However, each has a different impact on your health and well-being. So remember that it is always recommended to consume mostly vegetables, legumes, and other foods rich in starch before you go looking for simple carbs like white bread and pasta and white rice and all that. Before we move on, just a little bit more about carbs. Now, why we're digging so deep into carbohydrates is because, as you saw, is the cornerstone of a healthy body. Carbs are not bad, unlike what a lot of people are trying to say nowadays. They're not the devil. They are really there to help us. What we need to know is how to use them better. So carbs are essentially basically all sugars that our body converts to glucose. And I'm repeating this a lot because it's important to understand. Glucose is stored or used for energy, as we said before also. The GI, or glycemic index, measures just how much a particular food raises your blood sugar levels when you eat it. So simple carbs tend to have a high GI level because they affect your blood sugar a lot. They're quickly digested and absorbed, inducing a rapid fluctuation in blood sugar levels. So this has often been called a sugar crash following it. As you can see, that curve steeply falls down right after the peak, which leaves you feeling tired and hungry faster. Low GI carbs or complex carbs are digested and absorbed slower, which produces a gradual rise in your blood sugar. And they also have the benefits of weight control, as we said, because they keep you fuller longer. So my favorite sources of carbs will be oatmeal. Great for the breakfast. I have oatmeal almost every morning. Um, 1 cup of oatmeal mixed with water packs only 159 calories with a whopping 4 grams of carbs and 6 grams of protein. Apples are perfect for a good little snack. They have a ton of fiber also and pectin, which reduces bad cholesterol, paired with peanut butter for a protein-rich snack. Sweet potatoes are a true superfood. 1 cup of sweet potatoes has 7 grams of fiber, lots of vitamin A and C, and 4 grams of protein. Black beans, often overlooked, but when boiled, 1 cup has 15 grams of fiber and 15 grams of protein. It's really hard to beat those numbers. Finally, tomatoes, bursting with vitamins and minerals, not to mention some fiber and beautiful antioxidant lycopene. All right, so I know this was a lot of information about carbs, but as we saw, carbs are really the cornerstone, the foundation of the human body fueling system. Um, any diet that doesn't include carbs is a very restrictive and fairly harmful diet unless you have a medical need for that. And in that case, please go ahead, follow your doctor's or your nutritionist's advice. But otherwise, a lot of hype out there about how bad carbs are for you and all this. And I'm sorry, guys, but carbs are our friends. They are the main um, fuel for our body, and we need them. So yes, there are some bad carbs, and like I said, I love this house picture because it really reminds me every time that, like when I'm building or renovating a house, if I cheap out on the materials now, if I go for the wrong kind of carbs, the easy kind of carbs, or proteins or fats down the line, well, it might be easier now, it might be cheaper now, but down the road, I'm gonna pay for it. Either by having to do more maintenance, right? If you're gaining fat, for example, because you're eating too many simple carbs, or you're having trouble processing them because it's affecting your insulin regulation. Now you have to do a lot more work to fix that. Whereas if you work hard to put in the right kind of material and invest in what you're eating and how you're eating from the get-go, then down the road you have a much more solid structure that will keep you going on for a longer time. So using that same house analogy now, let's think on protein. Protein I like to think of as the brick and mortar of the house, okay? Just because in my head I picture the bones of my body and I picture the muscles on top. I just imagine protein sort of as the housing, the outside, okay? The walls. So going from that picture, that analogy, proteins are broken down in the gut to amino acids. The body can use these amino acids in 3 main ways. They can be used as building blocks in the production of new proteins needed for growth and repair tissue, making essential hormones and enzymes, and supporting immune function. So there's a lot going on there. Protein can also be used as an energy source when carbs aren't available readily, and they are also used as a starting material in the production of other compounds needed by the body. Um, all the protein found in the body are divided into 20 different amino acids. 8 of those are considered essential, meaning that they cannot be manufactured by your body and can only be obtained from animal sources or a few plant-based sources. So again, 20 types of amino acids required by the body, 8 are essential because we cannot make them ourselves. Amino acids will be preferentially shuttled to the repair and building of new body tissue, so muscle, as long as the body is in a positive energy balance. So if you're eating enough or more calories than you need, then you'll be able to use protein towards building muscle. So that's why muscle builders, gym buffs and all that, they're often going for a fairly high amount of calories, but not only calories, but also proteins, because between the two of them, you provide your body with the energy and the material that it needs to repair and your tissue, your muscle tissue, and also create some new muscle tissue. So what happens with the 12 amino acids that we can be find in our body? So as we said, 8 of them are considered essential, meaning we cannot make them. The remaining ones can be synthesized by the liver. or found in various plant-based protein sources. However, if an essential amino acid is missing, your body must break down its own protein to obtain it. So take peanut butter, for example. A serving may be described as containing 8 grams of protein. However, the problem with peanut butter is that it's not a complete protein as it lacks some of the essential amino acids. So unless you eat it with a piece of toast or pair it with an animal source protein, it will only count as 8 grams of fat while the protein is not utilized at all. So when it comes to how much protein we should eat, remember the macro, and we looked at like the percentage based on the number of calories that we get in a day. What I would suggest, based on a lot of my own research and a lot of documentation out there, is to aim for a daily protein target of 1 gram per pound of body weight. So as a baseline, set up your meal plans with approximately 30% of your total calories from protein. Um, Protein synthesis caps out around 30 or 40 grams depending on your size. So that means that as much as you want to eat your protein, with your meals and everything, you might have to spread it out through the day because eating more of it at the same time might not be very beneficial for your body. So remember, about 1 gram per pound of body weight should be sufficient, especially if you're active and trying to do bodybuilding. You can go a bit higher than that, but then I would suggest doing some research as to what would be the better number for you. Um, Protein-rich foods require your body to use more energy to digest them, which is called thermic effect. So nice thing about protein and why it's often touted as one of the better dieting or weight loss macro is because you burn about 30% of the calories you intake from protein just to be able to use them in your body. So the thermic effect of food, or TEF, refers to the number of calories needed by your body to digest, absorb, and process the nutrients in your meal. So, for example, they increase your metabolic rate for protein between 15 to 30% compared to 5 to 10% for carbs and only 0 to 3% for fat. So a protein-rich diet will ensure that a protein and fiber-rich diet, let's say for example, will ensure that you're going to stay full longer, but also that you're going to be burning a lot of these calories or not even like using them if it's a lot of fiber. And so if you're trying to lose weight or maintain your weight, these are great ways to go about it. So protein is often known as a muscle builder food. There's, as we said, the complete protein and the incomplete protein. Complete proteins contain all the essential amino acids in the exact amounts and proportions that your body needs. So the main sources of complete proteins will include milk, dairy products, eggs, fish, and meats. Incomplete proteins are the ones that we find in foods that can be counted towards your daily goal, but is usually not considered complete because it's low or lacking in one or more of the essential amino acids. So a lot of vegetables, beans, nuts, legumes, and grains have protein, but they're not considered complete protein. So they often have to be supported by your complete protein in a meal. A little bit of did you know, cue the music. Boom, 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 boom. Late 19th century North American believed that meat-centric diets led them to carnal sin. Therefore, breakfast cereal was first introduced in order to counter the heavy consumption of red meat at breakfast by Dr. John Kellogg and some of his contemporaries. Later down the road, as an addendum to that, breakfast cereal was served, or even at that time, breakfast cereal was served often traditionally with milk for the reason that we just spoke about. Your cereal has some protein in it, but is often not complete protein, so you need to add your complete protein milk to support it. All right, so using the house analogy, coming over from the carbs and the protein, what we've got left to explore now are fats. And just like carbs, fats have gained a really bad rap recently in modern times, um, especially because of sort of their bad cousins here that we'll talk about in a little bit. But really, in reality, fats are essential to a healthy body. So as we had used the house analogy, like I said, and we remember our protein being the frame, the structure, sorry, the carbs being the frame and the structure, and the protein being like the brick and mortar, fats are the essential components like running water, electricity, and gas, without which your house would only be a building. It wouldn't be a livable place because we need all these things to be able to live in the house. So getting plenty of healthy fats is essential to health and well-being. Mostly because fats play an important role for the balance hormone levels, essential metabolism functions, and absorption of fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, and carotenoids. Um, so as we'll see, fats basically are the lubricants to everything that happens in the body. Basically, they shuttle around the vitamins and the hormones. They shuttle around information. They help that. And so without it, and that's why I call it like the piping of the body. Again, I'm pretty sure that by now you've had the chance to hear the term good fats and bad fats. Um, there's more scientific terms to that that we'll look at, but really let's look at the fact that there are fats that heal and there are fats that kill. So good fats, for example, will turbocharge your energy, will actually help you burn more fat, will boost your muscle building hormones, improve blood sugar control, strengthen your joints, enhance your skin tone. There's a lot of benefits that you can get from actually eating good fats. Whereas bad fats will clog your arteries, promote weight gain, and wreak havoc on your body in all sorts of ways. All right, so just as we saw in the protein section that there are essential amino acids, there are also what we call essential fatty acids or EFAs. And as we remember from the protein section, essential means that we need them for proper and healthy functioning of our body, but we cannot produce them in our own body. So we have to acquire them from an outside source. The two primary EFAs are omega-3 and omega-6. There's been a problem in the recent times of a huge imbalance in our diet of us eating way more omega-6 than we need versus omega-3s. In fact, it's come to a ratio now of about 20 to 1 or even higher, where the optimal ratio really is more like 2 to 1, 2 omega-6 per omega-3. And this is mostly due to an increase in omega-6 rich refined grains and a decreased consumption of just fish in general. People like to eat farmed animal meat, for example, which is rich in omega-6, unlike the leaner and higher omega-3 wild game or fish. So obviously you can get your omega-3s by either eating food such as fish or a lot of seafood really will have it, nuts and seeds, or also get fortified foods. Like you can get a lot of fortified foods at the store now with it. Um, or, just get omega-3 supplements as well. Um, the problem with the omega-6 and 3 imbalance is just that the omega-3s or the omega-6 are acid, and omega-3s are more like antioxidant. So you don't want to have too much omega-6 in your body, although it's good for you. it's like anything else, too much often isn't. Um, so as we saw and talked about, the EFAs have to be supplied to our diets because we can get them or we can produce them ourselves, and they have to be supplied in the right amount and ratios for optimal health. EFA's roles are to increase the absorption of vitamins and minerals, nourish the skin, hair, and nails, promote proper nerve functioning, and they help produce hormones also. Finally, they ensure normal growth and development and prevent and treat diseases. Um, Now, if we go and explore the fats a little bit, as we said, there's more scientific names for good fats and bad fats, and what they mean to us. So let's start with the ones that we were trying to not stay away from or avoid, but really get a little bit less of, because we still need some saturated fats. They're still less desirable to us because um, of what they do. So saturated fats are solid or semi-solid at room temperature. So think of butter or animal fat, for example. Um, Again, they'll primarily be like butter, cheese, dairy fats, egg yolks, chocolate, tropical oils like coconut oil and so. Now, like I said, they're less desirable, as in we need less of them. We shouldn't eat too much of it, but there's still fats that we should get some. Egg yolks are absolutely good for your body. Dairy fats, again, same thing. Chocolate has a ton of good properties. So don't go and shun them just because you don't need too much of them. Unsaturated fats are mostly liquid at room temperature, so like olive oil. Um, they tend to lower levels of blood cholesterol and contains essential fatty acids. So unsaturated fats primarily are vegetable and plant sourced, with a few exceptions. So we're looking at vegetable and seed oils, avocados, nuts, nut butter, seeds like flax seeds, sunflower, etc., and fish oil. When you're looking at your macro target for fats, depending on whether you're male or female and what your goals are, if you're trying to bodybuild, lose weight, and all this, really a good window to target would be 20 to 30%. 20 is your absolutely bare minimum, guys. Don't go removing more than that from your diet, even men, please, because it is essential, for example, for the production of hormones like testosterone. So if you're going to the gym and you're trying to build muscle and you're not eating enough fat, you're gonna shortchange yourself because testosterone is helped by fat, and without it, you'll have a much harder time in the gym, for example. So as men, I know that we typically try to, say, oh, just cut out all the fat. No, you need healthy fats. And this goes even more for women whose bodies are extremely reliant on hormone balance, and too little fats will often bring a pretty bad hormone imbalance. So like I said, many people inadvertently cut out healthy fats along with the unhealthy one because you're trying to cut back. All of a sudden, you're cutting everything back instead of just the bad ones. A deficiency in essential fatty acids can cause a long list of health issues, including skin and hair problems, joint pain, fatigue, depression, and so on, guys. So again, fats are essential. You don't want to have too much, but really you cannot go too low. Um, Low fat diets, as I said, are also correlated with low testosterone levels. So there you have it. So a good way to really track your daily food, your daily intake is nowadays smartphones have applications that are available to help build and track your macros based on your weight and fitness goals. Okay, there are popular ones that like everybody uses, like MyFitnessPal, for example. There are more specialized ones like My Carb Manager. So there's a lot of resources that you can use to build your own macro, and even recipes to help you, like Balance on Demand, for example. there's Reddit forums, there's a lot of different macros, okay, that we can try to hit, um, depending on what your goals are. So if you're trying to weight loss, obviously your macro is going to be different than if you're trying to gain body mass or to like do bodybuilding. Um, if you're very active, you can go for a little, more carbs, for example. If you're bodybuilding a lot, you can go high protein. Remember that at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Always start at least, I would say for an average guy, start at 25% body fat, 25% fat. So if you start and you calculate, well, okay, how much protein do I need? And what is 25% fat in terms of calories? And all you got to do, guys, at the end of the day is fill in the rest with the carbs. And Bob's your uncle. Like, you've got a great macro to start with. So for bodybuilding, again, we talked about the protein. You can go higher than that if you really wanted to, but there's really a limit at which it starts losing effect. So I would research that if you don't know yet, or talk to, professionals about it and get a good diet going that way. Um, there's macros for weight maintenance. Okay. So a lot of people, I feel like, do it the wrong way. They go and they start counting calories first, and they think that's all that matters, right? They're like, oh, I need this many calories a day to either lose weight or gain weight, or so on and so forth. Really, I would start with like a basic calorie formula to see, yeah, okay, ballpark figure where you need to be. So, for example, quick rule of thumb to help you calculate your goal if you want to build muscle mass: eat your weight in pounds times 20 calories per day. Okay, so if I'm 200 pounds and I want to gain or build muscle, I'm going to say 200 times 20. That's going to be my calorie goal. If you want to maintain, you multiply by 15, and if you want to lose, you multiply by 10. Okay, very, very basic formula. So you can see that the range of calories goes from 2,000 if I want to lose fat, 200 pounds, to 4,000 if I wanted to build muscle or gain body mass in any case. Um, and there's a happy in between there. So, the formulas that we use at the beginning, you can run through those, tweak them to your liking, and then once you know the calories that you need to eat, this is really only the starting place. Then you come down to the macro and you have a look at it. Practice awareness by using technology available to you. Track your eating habits and goals so that you can really reach your weight or fitness goals. So what I would encourage you guys to do is take your phones out right now, go to your app store, and download an app like MyFitnessPal, for example, and start playing around with it. And like you see in this picture here, um, I've entered like a regular breakfast that I would have, okay? Oatmeal, I add some whey protein concentrate to it, have a banana, and 1 egg, okay? And what does that give me? This is a macro that I typically would pursue on a daily basis, about a 45, 35, 45 carb, 35 protein macro, and a 20% fat. And like I said, 20% is absolutely bare minimum if I was going to go to the gym on a more regular basis. Um, like right now, for example, with COVID, everything is closed. But once I start going back to the gym on a more regular basis, I would probably start adding a bit more fat to my diet to promote testosterone, and maybe take away a little bit of the just to reduce the protein to 30%, because really there's already a lot there going in. So that's it, guys, for this chapter. Um, Always think about these things like when you're eating, or if you have some specific health goals, what is your macro? Think about foods that you could have replaced to reduce or augment certain macros. How much of your daily calorie intake did that account for when you eat? and what your health goals are will really dictate from here how you're going to eat. As always, there's going to be a few review questions that I'm going to leave you guys in the description below. If you have any questions of your own, I'm always happy and open to answer them. Again, quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, physician, or nutritional specialist. I'm just a regular guy here trying to help you guys out understand just the very basics of nutrition and how it affects our health and our capacity to perform at the peak. As always, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next chapter of the Pilot Factored.